Every day, this little girl prayed that God would hear you, until one day, the heavens responded to her prayers and sent a tremendous miracle into her life. In a small town forgotten by time, where life moved at a humble pace and hopes mingled, with everyday hardships there lived a girl named Emily, whose faith and innocence shone like a beacon of light amid the darkness of days filled with deprivation. From a very young age, her devotion was both instinctive and profound, inspired by the teachings of her grandmother Martha, who taught her to look beyond the limits of the present and nurture an unshakable belief in divine intervention. Fairview, the town where Emily lived, was marked by unreliable harvests, by droughts that tormented the land, and by the despair that filled the hearts of its residents, who, despite the difficulties, still clung to small dreams of better days. With her innocence and inner strength, Emily visited the small chapel perched atop the hill every day, a place where she found refuge and inspiration for her prayers, feeling that her soul connected with heaven in an intense and true way. The girl's routine was a ritual of faith and hope. At the break of each dawn, she would set off barefoot through the fields, absorbing the morning dew and murmuring prayers that spoke of love, renewal, and justice for all. Her words, filled with a sincerity that seemed capable of transcending the limits of time and space, touched those who cared to listen, even in silence. The town elders, who had long recalled ancient legends of miracles, saw in Emily the promise of change, stirring in their hearts memories of times when faith transformed reality in miraculous ways. Among these elders, the wise Mr. Daniel stood out, his perceptive vision and calm demeanor, recognizing in the girl a potential to rewrite the destiny of that desolate place, a place whose withered fields and tired hearts longed for a sign of hope. One day, while walking through the parched fields, Emily encountered a solitary man seated in the shade of an old oak tree. His face, creased by time and suffering, revealed a history of struggles and disappointments. It was Peter, a farmer who had lost everything to the relentless drought. His eyes, once full of determination, now reflected only the emptiness of one who could no longer believe. "Why do you keep praying, little girl?" he asked in a rough, rarely used voice. "Don't you see your prayers are carried off by the same wind that dries our fields? The heavens are closed off to us." Emily sat beside him, her dusty little feet contrasting with the arid ground. Without answering immediately, she scooped up a handful of dirt and let it slip through her fingers, like grains representing time that seemed to stand still. "Mr. Peter," she finally said, her voice as soft as the breeze that rarely graced. "Those parts, the heavens never close completely. Even when we cannot see the stars, they're still there, shining behind the clouds. Hope is the same way." Peter looked at her, searching for reasons to disagree, but something about the child stopped him from quelling his faith with bitter words born of his own despair. Instead, he felt a solitary tear roll down his weathered face. The first in a long time. "I don't pray only for myself," Emily continued, "but for all of us. For you too. And one day, when we least expect it, the answer will come." As the days passed, conditions in Fairview became even more critical. The scarcity of water worsened the hardships. Farmers suffered on parched lands, and the community, steeped in desolation, began to lose faith in better days. The well in the town square, once abundant, now offered only a trickle of muddy water. Women queued from dawn, carrying buckets and jugs, waiting their turn with faces marked by worry. Mary, Emily's mother, was one of those women, a widow for 3 years. After her husband succumbed to a mysterious fever that swept through the town, she struggled to maintain the small property they had built together. Her calloused hands told stories of hard work and unconditional love. Even in the hardest moments, Mary never allowed her daughter to see the full extent of her anguish. Yet Emily, with the sensitivity that only children possess, saw past her mother's tired smile. One evening, as shadows crept along the simple walls of their home, Emily found her mother silently weeping over the last slice of bread she had saved for her daughter. "Mom, why are you crying?" Emily asked, hugging her from behind with her small but affectionate arms. Mary quickly wiped away her tears, trying to hide her vulnerability. "It's nothing, honey. I'm just tired." Emily sat on her mother's lap, holding her face in her hands. "Grandma Martha always said that tears are the prayers the heart can't express in words," she said with a wisdom that seemed to belong to another era. "Don't be afraid to cry, Mom. God understands that language too." Mary looked at her daughter, amazed by the depth of her words. How could a 12-year-old grasp so much about human pain? That night, mother and daughter prayed together, their voices intertwining in the silence of their modest home, creating a melody of hope that lingered in the air even after the words had faded. The next morning when Emily awoke, she sensed something different in the air. It wasn't just the light streaming through the window slats or the chirping of the few birds still persisting in the area. It was an inexplicable certainty, a knowing that came from deep within her being. Today was going to be a special day. "Mom," she called as Mary prepared a thin oatmeal porridge with the last of their oats. "I need to go to the chapel early today." Mary looked at her daughter with curious eyes. "Has something happened, Emily?" The girl smiled, her eyes sparkling with an inner light that illuminated the whole house. "Not yet, Mom, but it will." In that moment, Emily realized that the prayers she offered were not merely individual pleas, but a collective offering of hope that could be shared with everyone in town. On her way to the chapel, she stopped at the modest home of Agnes, an elderly lady who had been living alone since her children left to seek work in far-off places. Agnes sat in her rocking chair, her gnarled fingers busily embroidering a pattern that seemed never-ending. "Miss Agnes," Emily called from the slightly ajar door, "would you like to come with me to the chapel today?" The elderly woman looked up, surprised by the invitation. It had been years since she managed to climb the hill to the chapel. Her weakened legs and lingering arthritis no longer allowed it. "Oh, my dear," she replied with a faint smile. "You know I can't manage that walk anymore." Emily stepped into the humble home and approached her. "Today is a special day, Ms. Agnes. Let me help you get there." There was something in the determination of this child that made Agnes consider the possibility. With a sigh, she set aside her embroidery and picked up the intricately carved cane that her late husband had made for her. "If you think we can do it, then we'll try," she said, rising with difficulty. The journey was slow and punctuated by frequent breaks, but with every step, Agnes felt a renewed energy coursing through her tired body. Emily held her arm firmly, as if transmitting her own strength through that touch. When they reached the chapel door, they found Peter, the very farmer Emily had comforted days before. He seemed embarrassed by his presence there, as if he had been compelled by a force beyond his understanding. "Good morning, Mr. Peter," Emily greeted him with a radiant smile. "I'm glad to see you here today." The man mumbled something unintelligible but did not move away. Together, the three of them entered the little chapel, its interior bathed in the golden light streaming through the modest windows. A carved image of Saint Benedict, crafted by the skilled hands of generations past, appeared to watch over them with understanding eyes. Determined to make a difference, Emily immersed herself completely in prayer, believing that her pure heart was capable of invoking a response from heaven itself. As the morning wore on, more people arrived at the chapel, drawn by a force they could not explain. Men and women who had long abandoned hope, young people whose dreams withered before they could bloom, children who had never known abundance. All felt an inexplicable calling to be there on that day. Mr. Daniels, the most respected elder in town, was among the last to arrive. His wise eyes observed the gathered crowd with a mixture of surprise and expectation. He recognized what was happening even before the others did. It was the beginning of something extraordinary. On that memorable day, as the sun shyly rose over the chapel and tension filled every corner of Fairview, the girl gathered the townspeople, who, though skeptical and feeling they had nowhere else to turn, found a final remnant of faith in her words. The silence that fell as Emily rose to speak was almost palpable. Not the silence of emptiness, but that quiet before decisive moments, like the instant before dawn or the pause preceding an important revelation. "Today we are all here," she began, her clear, steady voice echoing through the chapel's walls, "because there is still love in our hearts, a love that unites us, even when everything seems to pull us apart. Her eyes swept across every face present, establishing an unspoken connection with each person. Our drought torments the land and hunger knocks at our doors. Many of us no longer know where to look or whom to trust. But I tell you this, as long as we are together, as long as we share not only our pain, but also our hope, there is a path ahead of us. A murmur of approval ran through the assembly. The simple words of that little girl touched something deep within, a truth they all knew but had forgotten amid so many hardships. Today, she continued, we're not just asking for rain for our fields or water for our wells. We are asking that the love which still lives inside us be transformed into the strength to carry on, the courage to face another day, and the faith to believe that the impossible can happen. With a trembling voice yet a conviction that seemed to break through the very barrier of the impossible, Emily cried out not merely for rain, but for the renewal of hope, asking that heaven open up to pour blessings upon the land and restore joy to desperate hearts. And then something extraordinary occurred. One by one, the people of Fairview began to rise. Peter, the farmer who had lost everything, was the first. His voice, hoarse with emotion, joined Emily's in a sincere prayer. Agnes, the elderly, woman who could barely walk, rose with the aid of her cane, her voice trembling but resolute as it echoed through the chapel walls. Mary, tears streaming down her face, stood up as well, followed by everyone else. In just a few minutes, the chapel resounded with the unified voices of Fairview's residents, a symphony of hope that rose above the modest roof and reached the heavens. No longer were they isolated individuals in their suffering, but a community bound together by faith and the desire for transformation. As the prayers spread and the atmosphere subtly shifted, the townspeople began to feel a calm they hadn't experienced in ages, a relief that seemed to herald the arrival of something extraordinary. Mr. Daniels was the first to notice the change in the air, a different aroma, a lightness that contrasted starkly with the dryness of recent months. His experienced eyes turned to the chapel window, and what he saw made his heart race. "Look!" he exclaimed, pointing skyward. Everyone followed his gaze. The clouds, once rare and scattered, were gathering on the horizon, forming shapes reminiscent of promises written in a celestial language. The wind, which for so long had carried nothing but dust and desolation, now bore a forgotten freshness. "It's just wind," someone murmured, trying to hold back the hope that was beginning to stir. But Emily smiled, her eyes reflecting the approaching clouds. "This is the beginning of an answer," she said with serene certainty. The following hours were filled with growing anticipation. The entire town remained alert, eyes fixed on the ever-changing sky. The clouds, once white and distant, grew gray and dense, moving closer like a celestial army ready to battle the drought. The first thunder came at dusk, a deep roar that sent children scurrying to their mothers and adults exchanging astonished, incredulous glances. A hushed expectancy fell over the crowd, as if nature itself waited for the next act in this divine drama. Then came the rain. It wasn't a violent storm that would destroy the few remaining crops, nor a passing drizzle that barely moistened the parched earth. It was a generous, steady rain, each drop seeming to carry blessings in its descent. The residents of Fairview emerged from their homes, unconcerned about getting wet. Children danced in newly formed puddles, their laughter blending with the sound of falling water. Men and women lifted their faces to the sky, allowing the rain to wash over not only their bodies, but also their wearied souls. Peter, the farmer who had lost everything, knelt in the soaked ground, his calloused hands sinking into the earth that now received life's renewed gift. Tears mixed with raindrops on his face as he murmured words of gratitude. Agnes, once barely able to walk, stood at her doorstep, her bright eyes witnessing a miracle many had stopped expecting. What began as a subtle shift in the arrangement of clouds in the course of a cooling wind soon materialized into tangible answers. The sparse rain transformed into a constant dew that moistening the parched land, rekindling the faith of the farmers and the enthusiasm of Fairview's simple folk. The rain continued the next day, and the day after, a continuous blessing determined to erase every trace of the relentless drought. Rivers that were once dry and forgotten began to flow again, and the fields, soaked with new moisture, started showing the first signs of a reborn harvest. A week after the rain began, when the clouds finally dispersed to reveal a soft, welcoming sun, Fairview was transformed. Mud-covered streets testified to the abundance that had returned. Wells overflowed with crystal-clear water, and the fields revealed the first tender green shoots, a promise of a harvest that would finally provide nourishment for everyone. Yet the most impressive transformation was that on the faces of the residents. Despair had given way to hope, weariness to renewed energy, and distrust to solidarity. People who once barely exchanged greetings now worked together, rebuilding what the drought had destroyed, sharing resources and planning a future that suddenly seemed possible again. Amid this miracle, Mr. Daniels watched with tears in his eyes, recognizing that the power of a sincere prayer, laden with love and determination, could indeed be the catalyst for a remarkable transformation. The elder, whose wisdom had been forged through many hardships, understood that the true miracle was not merely the rain falling from the heavens, but the profound change occurring in people's hearts. He recalled old stories told by his grandfather, tales of times when faith moved mountains and opened paths where there had once been insurmountable barriers. Now, he witnessed with his own eyes one of those rare moments when the veil between the earthly and the divine seemed to thin, allowing the light of grace to shine through and touch those who had long lost hope. His lips murmured silent prayers of gratitude as his wrinkled hands traced the sign of the cross over his chest. One afternoon, while walking through the rejuvenated fields, Mr. Daniels found Emily sitting by a stream that had begun to flow once more. The girl watched the movement of the water with a serene gaze, as if contemplating mysteries only she could perceive. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" he asked, sitting beside her on the damp grass. Emily smiled, a smile carrying both the innocence of childhood and the wisdom of many lives. "I didn't know how or when, Mr. Daniels. I just knew we weren't alone in our suffering." The old man nodded, understanding the depth of her simple reply. "Many call this a miracle," he observed, "and they want to thank you for bringing it to us." Emily dipped her fingers into the clear water, creating small ripples that spread out in perfect circles. "A miracle isn't something one person does, Mr. Daniels. It happens when we open our hearts to receive it." Mr. Daniels looked at her with renewed admiration. "There is wisdom in you beyond your years, child." "It's not wisdom," she replied simply. "It's just faith, the same faith that lives in each of us, even when we forget it. Always." Humble and never seeking recognition, Emily remained steadfast in her belief that she was merely a messenger of hope, and that the true power resided in the shared faith of the townspeople. In the days and weeks that followed, life in Fairview continued to change. The seeds planted in the now moist fields grew vigorously, promising an abundant harvest. The houses, once neglected by despair, began to receive fresh care. The town square, long just a passageway, transformed once again into a meeting place, where laughter and conversation replaced the silence laden with worry. Peter, the farmer, who had lost everything, was among the first to taste the fruits of the new era. His fields, once dried under the merciless sun, now boasted thriving rows of corn, beans, and other crops. But the greatest transformation was not in his land, but in his heart. The bitter, disillusioned man had given way to one who smiled easily and eagerly helped his neighbors. One morning, as Emily helped her mother hang clothes to dry on the line, Peter arrived carrying a basket overflowing with fresh vegetables and fruit from his revived orchard. "It's not much compared to what you deserve," he said, placing the basket at Mary's feet, "but it comes from the heart." Mary began to protest, saying it wasn't necessary, but Peter raised his hand to stop her. "Please accept it," he insisted. "It's not just about the food itself, but what it represents. Your daughter taught me to look beyond the surface, to see promises where only despair once dwelled. That means more than anything I could offer." His dedication and courage inspired those who, even in the face of adversity, saw in the girl the reflection of a future full of possibilities. Agnes, the elderly woman who could barely walk, also experienced an unexpected renewal. Her legs, once painful and weak, seemed to find newfound strength. It wasn't an instantaneous miracle of healing, but a gradual improvement that allowed her to walk a little further each day. Soon enough, she managed to venture alone to the town square, where she joined other women in their needlework under the shade of trees that were beginning to bloom again. "It's as if time has turned back," she remarked to Mary while watching Emily playing with other children. Mary smiled, sharing in her friend's joy. "Miracles come in many forms, don't they?" Agnes nodded, her eyes following the graceful movements of Emily, who was now teaching other children how to make crowns from wildflowers that had sprouted after the rain. "Your daughter is remarkable, Mary," Agnes said, her voice choked with emotion. "There's something in her that reminds us of who we truly are, beyond all the pain and struggles." "Yes," Mary agreed, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "Sometimes I think she isn't just my daughter, but a gift for all of us." For a long moment, the two women were silent, contemplating the deep peace that had settled in their lives. It was a peace far beyond the mere absence of troubles, a peace born from the certainty that even when new challenges arose, and they surely would, there now existed the renewed strength to overcome them. Gradually, the story of that miracle, the rain that revived the fields and renewed hearts, spread like an everlasting legacy, reminding each new generation that faith, prayer, and generosity can change the destiny of those who dare to believe. Travelers passing through Fairview carried with them accounts of what they had witnessed or heard. The tale of the little girl whose faith reached the heavens and brought rain to a dying land. Some embellished the narrative with fantastic details that never actually occurred. Others tried to explain the phenomenon through science or mere coincidence. But to the people of Fairview, it didn't matter how others interpreted what had happened. They knew deep in their hearts that they had experienced something extraordinary, something that transcended simple explanations or convenient rationalizations. Mr. Daniels began to record the events in a leather-bound notebook, a gift from his own father. His hands, wrinkled with time, carefully chronicled every detail, every emotion, every transformation. It was not only so that the story would not be forgotten, but so that its deeper meaning could be understood by generations to come. On starlit nights, by the light of a small lamp casting dancing shadows on the walls of his modest home, the old sage pored over his memories, seeking the exact words to describe the indescribable, to capture the essence of that transformation that went far beyond the physical change of the landscape. "Why do you write so much, Mr. Daniels?" Emily once asked him, curious to see him always with his notebook and pen. The elder smiled, gently placing his hand on the girl's head. "Because some stories aren't meant to belong only to those who lived them, but to everyone who needs hope," he replied. "In the future, when others face their own droughts, whether of the land or of the soul, they will need to know that the rain always returns, if there is enough faith to await it." Emily nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "And you will tell everything exactly as it happened?" Mr. Daniels chuckled softly. "I will tell the truth, child, not just the facts, which are merely the surface, but the deeper truth behind them." "And what is that truth?" the girl inquired, her eyes shining with curiosity. "That love is the most powerful force of all," he answered without hesitation. "Stronger than drought, more enduring than suffering, and more transformative than any miracle." Thus, the little girl who had touched heaven with her prayers became a symbol of unyielding hope, a reminder that even in the midst of drought and despair, the light of faith can transform reality, causing every heart to sprout the belief that miracles happen for those who never stop dreaming and fighting for a better tomorrow. Emily grew up, yet her essence remained the same, the purity that saw beyond the visible and felt the unseen pulsating in all things. Her presence was a constant reminder that true strength lies not in the ability to control the outer world, but in the courage to open oneself to the infinite possibilities residing within every human being. Her story, recorded in Mr. Daniels's notebook and etched in the hearts of Fairview's residents, would continue to inspire courage and renew faith for generations, reminding everyone that true miracles are not merely extraordinary events, but The inner transformations that allow us to see the world and one another with fresh eyes. And so, when visitors asked about the girl who brought rain to Fairview, the townspeople would smile and share not only the tale of the miracle, but the most precious lesson Emily had left them: that no one is ever alone in their suffering, that hope is a daily choice, and that when we unite in faith and love, even the impossible becomes possible. The transformation of Fairview continued well beyond that first rain miracle. The fertile fields produced abundant harvests, families began to thrive again, and the town, once forgotten and on the brink of death, became a place where life blossomed in every form. Over the seasons, new houses were built, the little school reopened its doors, and even a weekly market began drawing visitors from neighboring communities. The chapel's bell, which had long remained silent, now rang joyfully, calling everyone to thankfulness. Young people who had left in search of opportunities in distant lands started returning, bringing fresh ideas and renewed hope for the future of a town they had once abandoned in despair. But more important than the external changes were the inner transformations that took root in every resident. The belief that even in the darkest nights, a star is always guiding the way. Home. That even in the most arid deserts there exists a hidden spring waiting to gush forth, and that even within the most despondent hearts, there is always room for a miracle.